for that. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors suffer another disappointing 118-108 loss to the Los Angeles Lakers at Chase Center on Saturday night. Definitely a televised game, and there were some positive performances for the Warriors, but ultimately another loss, which pushes them back to a 22-23 record after 45 games, still 11th in the Western Conference standings, obviously back below 500. Look, we can talk all day about some of the positive performances from the Warrior younger players, and I'll get into that. Quentin Post, I thought showed some signs again. Brandon Pajemski was probably the biggest positive from a Golden State perspective. Moses Moody continued his streak of 10-plus points. So we can talk about that, and I'll get into that. But at the end of the day, this result comes down to the lack of star power on the Warrior roster, and particularly when Steph Curry has a second-half performance like that, where he goes for 13 points in the first half, has it rolling a little bit, and then goes completely scoreless, 0 of 8 shooting in the second half. And you just cannot afford that kind of performance from your superstar player. And part of it goes on to Steph, and I think he deserves some significant blame for this loss. He just didn't get it done in the second half. It's as simple as that. And at the end of the day, this team will only go as far as what Steph can take them, which is probably not far as it is. But if Steph's not actually going to lead the way, then it's going to be very difficult to beat anyone for the Warriors. And if you say to me that, before this game, Steph Curry has 13 points for the game, I'd expect that a 10-point loss is pretty predictable here. So at the end of the day, you've got Steph Curry going for 13 points, Anthony Davis going for 36 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. The Warriors had no answer for him defensively. It was really, barbecue chicken for AD, regardless of who he's matched up against, whether it was Trace Jackson-Davis, who got the start but played less than 15 minutes, Kevon Looney, or Quentin Post, who I thought he battled. He had some reasonable defensive possessions, but Anthony Davis is a superstar player. And unfortunately, as we kind of spoke about after the post-game live against the Bulls, it's nice to have a guy out there who can shoot the ball a little bit like Quentin Post. And he didn't do it in this game, but moving forward, you want to be able to try and test AD on the other side of the floor, because, if he's in a mood like that offensively, it's going to be pretty hard to stop him. And maybe the best way of trying to stop him is actually getting him a bit tired by making him work on the defensive side of the floor. And the Warriors just didn't really do that enough in this game. And LeBron was quite big for them as well. Just looking at his numbers, he had over 10 assists, where he went 25 and 12 with 5 rebounds. He was a plus 11 AD, a plus 9. So you've got their superstar duo going for 61 points, 18 rebounds, 15 assists in this game. You're not going to get the job done when Steph Curry, who's your only superstar, goes for 13 points. So part of it is the blame on Steph. Absolutely 0 of 8 shooting from the floor. There's no excuses for going scoreless from him in the second half. Part of it is also just to do with the roster. And again, if Steph has a quiet game, how much can you actually, what are your chances of victory? They're slim to none, obviously. You need Steph to have a big game in order to win. And that's what having multiple stars on your team, on your roster, allows you. It means that, hey, okay, we can have one of these guys on the floor at all times, like the Warriors did. Like the Lakers did with AD or LeBron. You can mix up their minutes, so you've got one of those guys on the floor at all times. But you can also allow yourself to have a little bit of leeway if one of them is struggling. You've got the other one there who's capable of having a 25, 30-point game, or Anthony Davis going for 36 if we still consider him, 1B to LeBron's 1A. So this is the Warriors, what they've tried to chase over the past 12 months in the way of LeBron back to last season's deadline, Paul George, Larry Markkinen, a bit of interest in Jimmy Butler here over the last few weeks. It's now kind of petered out to nothing. They've been looking for that second star. They simply haven't got it. And with Steph Curry nearing 37 years of age, how much can you actually expect for him to be having big performances on a consistent basis in order to get the Warriors victory? I know he didn't have a big scoring output against the Bulls the other night, but he had 12 assists or something like that. He had a good game still, even if the scoring wasn't there necessarily from him. And I know he had 9 assists as well in this game, and the defense did load up on him in the second half again, which has been a constant problem for the Warriors. But Steph's got to be better. 4 of 17 shooting from the floor, 2 of 9 from 3-point range, minus 17 in this game. Wiggins had 20 points, 9 of 15, only 1 of 6 from 3-point range, which was that bailout three, not the bailout three, the buzzer beating three at the end of the third quarter. Wiggins was a minus 19 as well. The starting group is a big concern for me. I'll get on to that, but I just want to get through some of your comments first. FTW Clan says, was not expecting Curry to be shut down in the second half. Surprised how much Kerr let Post get cooked by AD. Well, I think he was getting cooked by everyone. Not Post. I think AD was cooking everyone, whether it be Loon, TJD, Quentin Post. I actually didn't mind it. And once the Warriors fell behind, like one thing I will give to Steve is like he went full offense down the stretch there. He was like, all right, Steph, Podz, Wiggins, who he had Buddy Hield out there as well, and Quentin Post. So defensively, you're giving up a lot ultimately at the end of the day, the Warriors could never pull back that margin because they just didn't have enough defense on the floor. You're playing a 3-guard lineup with Steph, Podz, Buddy Hield. You're playing Quentin Post at center. Look, I didn't hate that because you needed offense to try and win the game. Your defense wasn't really great anyway. The Lakers, they shot, I think, 10 of 29 from 3 in this game, 34.5%. But you know what? It actually felt worse than that. Some of the corner threes that the Warriors gave up, particularly in the third quarter, were really, really frustrating. And that just kills you when you're, going to get torched on the inside with, Anthony Davis in there to begin with. If you're giving up those corner threes, they can really be a huge detriment to your chances, particularly when you're already behind. Like they're just killers for you. So as much as, the Lakers only went 34.5%, only made 10 threes, it felt like every three was almost worth double, particularly in that second half. Damien says, I think Post did better than Looney and TJD at guarding AD. There's some times where his length is actually a bit of a problem. Like, I just want to, this is me clinging on to something at the end of the game, but LeBron had a kind of tough fadeaway mid-range jump shot late in the game, like in the final 90 seconds. Game was already over. And Post, got a contest up, and you could just, he's 7 foot with a reasonable wingspan, and you could tell it made a little bit of a difference, and LeBron missed it. And I just think, his size, he's much more, and this is what I think Steve's been trying to allude to here, is that he's much more than just, this three-point shooter. He actually does use his size. He had a really nice finish in the third quarter where he got a mismatch in the post and was able to kind of get to the rim and make an easy layup. So I think he's more than just a three-point shooter. His passing in this game was a real standout to me. He had 3 assists early on, had that 8-point stretch in the third quarter where he made, I think it was a corner 3, then he made that layup I spoke about, then he made a top of the arc 3 as well, 8 points in about a 3-minute span. Didn't have any other points outside of that, but I actually thought it was, another pretty positive game for him, and clearly Steve right now is trusting him over Loon and TJD, which I think that's huge moving forward. If this is going to be the Warriors' prominent center, I don't know what they're going to do with the starting lineup because you've got TJD, Buddy Hield, Gary Payton II. You could argue those 3 guys shouldn't be starting, and Buddy Hield plays 21, just over 21 minutes in this game, goes 3 of 9, 2 of 8, 10 points, 4 rebounds, completely ineffective. Again, he wouldn't have played that much, I don't think, if the Warriors weren't down, double digits late in the game, and clearly Steve realized that he needed offense. So you've got him playing just over 21, Trace playing 14 minutes, 16 seconds, GP2 playing 14:49. I was a little bit surprised with the GP2 minutes because he was good. He was legit good in his under 15 minutes. He was 5 of 6, hit 2 threes early, had 6 rebounds, 2 assists, still was really, really active. Why, I'm often, don't get me wrong, I'm often clamoring for GP2 to play less because I think with the spacing issues, you can't play him too much. But this was a game where I think he should have actually played more. And to me, if you've got Post out there playing 25 minutes and he's a stretch 5, then you can get away with having Gary Payton II on the floor more. At least theoretically you should, because you're okay, we can't play GP2 and another non-shooter out there. But if we have GP2 and 4 shooters, and Post is one of those, then you should be able to get away with it a little bit more. So if anything, Post being in the rotation and playing more minutes than Looney and Jackson Davis should open up more minutes for GP2. But that clearly wasn't the case in this game, which is a real surprise given his 15 minutes were quite excellent. He was a +1. He was really good. So I don't know where the Warriors go from there in relation to that. Doggy says that's the problem of DFS and Vando. Curry got shut down. Knox says I lost faith in this team. They're not making the play-in. Yeah, still 11th in the West. Looks like I think Phoenix beat Washington today. So I think they're a game out of the play-in tournament now. I mean, they're still somewhat close-ish. They're around the mark. So there's still plenty of time here to get things right, but you don't want to be falling any further than what they are, and they need to take advantage of this stretch at home where they've got 9 of 10 games or whatever in California. Zach says LeBron's career has been extended by at least 5 years just because of the refs. He and Davis never have to play at pace because of all the foul calls. I mean, the free throw shooting, I know AD got to the line of 10 of 12, but the free throw shooting wasn't really too much of a difference. Like the Lakers took one more. Issue was the Lakers made 14 of 17, 82.4%. The Warriors went 10 of 16, 62.5%, which is not surprising, unfortunately, with the Warriors and their free throw shooting woes this season. Damien says Kerr taking out Post after he made that three was crazy. Yeah, I tweeted about it. He had 8 points in 3 minutes and then just subbed out of the game for Looney for the final minute of the third quarter. I was like, what? For what reason are we doing that? But Brian Witt on X pointed out to me that at the end of that clip where Post made the top of the arc three, he kind of signaled to be subbed out of the game. I think he might have just been knackered, tired. I don't know. And that's part of the thing here. Like, this guy, has obviously never played at an NBA intensity. So him playing 20 to 25 minutes, he's probably going to get gassed on a few occasions here. So he did come back and play a lot of minutes in the fourth quarter. And again, I thought he was a reasonable positive for the Warriors in what was ultimately another disappointing loss. Then X says Steph sold. Yeah, he was disappointing. May says, let's expect disappointment with this team and we'll never be disappointed. You got a point there. Then X says our perimeter defense is so bad. Another reason as to why it was weird that GP2 didn't play more. Again, oftentimes I don't think he should be in the rotation, but this is a game where he played well in his 15 minutes. The perimeter defense and the collapsing defense giving up corner threes was a real problem. And again, if you're going to play Quentin Post as much as you are, you should be able to get away with playing GP2, particularly if he knocked down 2 of his 3 threes in this game. So I don't know, bizarre. I thought that in terms of the Steve Kerr's rotation. Jay says the construction of this roster is basketball malpractice. People got paid real money to put this stuff together, I'll say. It's not good. It's not good. No, I was very, very critical of Mike Dunleavy Jr. After the Celtics loss, and I think rightly so. I think Quentin Post over these last couple of games has probably addressed some of the roster issues in terms of having a stretch 5 on the floor. I would still like a more proven starting caliber one, because at what point, what are we doing with the center rotation here? Honestly, what are we doing? You've got Trace playing 14-16. You've got Loon playing 10-25, and you've got Post playing 23-19. So I'm all for the Post minutes. Based on this game, he should be getting more. Does that mean he's starting? But are we really starting a rookie center? That's why I'm going out to get Vucevic. TJD's minutes are not good. He's 2 of 6. Can the guy make a layup, please? I'm getting sick of it. Not only that, free throws, any chance. I don't think there clearly statistically is not a worse big man finisher around the NBA. There's just not. And if you've got, part of the thing with Vucevic is, yes, he can stretch the floor, and maybe the numbers from three-point range aren't particularly real in terms of him being over 40% this season, and maybe he's more like a 33 to 36% three-point shooter. But he does have a little bit of touch around the paint, right? He can be a go-to scorer down low. He is going to finish some of these plays where, now he's not athletic, but he does have the skill level that TJD just simply does not. And I mean, Post is probably, we're talking about his ability to stretch the floor, but his finishing inside is probably better than TJD's as well. So, I mean, if it's not a dunk, then TJD cannot make a basket. It's a real problem, because he averaged 20 points a game in his final year in college at Indiana. And he's looked like he had some post move. He looked like he had some finishing ability. And now that's just completely evaporated. And I think it's part of it is because he's so left-hand dominant. I think, and I've spoken about that previously. And the other part is confidence. Like, he's just completely lacking confidence in terms of finishing. Like, he had one against AD early in the third quarter where he looked like he had position, looked like it should have been an easy layup, and just bricked it. Like, I don't know what's going on. Thandeka says, we are so mid. Drew says, can't have another superstar because Steph makes, 60 million. Yeah, do you know what really hurts right now? Watching this quit and post stuff and how good it's been, it must be said. It really hurts that we don't have Markkanen. Like, Markkanen was the one where he was only making 17 million this season, and you'd have to pay him 40 plus million from next season, but you'd have a year of a guy who is that near all-star caliber player, who can average 20 points a game, who can shoot 40% from three on high volume, who is 7 foot tall at the same time. Like, you could have had that guy next to Steph as like your second star, and instead the Warriors couldn't get it done. And now feels like with this post stuff, it feels like we've wasted half the season. Like, it feels like, oh, this is great. We've now got this stretch five who can actually be out on the floor for 20 plus minutes. But it's 45 games into the season. We've got a below 500 record. Like, it's too late. It is literally too late when you could have had Lauri Markkanen, or maybe you could have played. I'm not sure you could have played post beforehand. I think you needed the G League run, but you could have had another stretch five. You could have traded for Vucevic in the offseason or 2 months ago, whatever, and you could have had this type of player earlier in the season. And maybe your record looks different than it is right now. Jay says, Laker doesn't care as long as Curry keeps printing him money. Drew says, for real, what do you even expect from this season? At this point, just looking for some things to be happy about. Well, I know Tim Bontemps and Brian Windhorst had a very kind of brutal outlook on the Warriors season in their latest trade intel today, which, to quote, said, there is no player available via trade right now who will change Golden State's fortunes enough to spark a run into the West top six. So no player available that they could trade for right now that would mean they're a top six seed. And that's kind of rough because, and it's probably fair. It's probably fair, to be honest. But to say that there's no player they could trade for is one thing, but they're also just saying, well, they're not going to make top six regardless, even if they, get Draymond and Kuminga back, even if this quit and post stuff is real. And I tend to think like very highly unlikely that I think we'll get a top six seed, but I do think that people are underestimating the impact of what a stretch five could do for the Warriors and what, Quentin Post is showing for them. Like, if you look at their last 3 games, what they've posted, 117 points against the Kings, 131 points against the Bulls, 108 points isn't great against the Lakers, but like Steph has a just randomly horrific game. Like, even if Steph goes and has 20 points in this game, they probably get to 115. And so their offense in the last 3 games has actually been pretty decent. And whether coincidental or not, I don't think it's a coincidence. That's like the first 3 games of Quentin Post's real rotation role with the Warriors. And so I think, yes, we're not going to get a star player before the deadline. And as a result, this team's pretty limited in where it could get to. But I do think I think people externally underestimate the impact that a stretch five, a competent stretch five can have on this team. Knox says, do we know when JK and Green are coming back? Well, the Draymond stuff sounds not overly serious. So he was listed to be out for a week. Could be back, hopefully. Hopefully only misses a couple more games. The Kuminga stuff is less optimistic, I think. Sounds like he's going to be out, perhaps, most certainly beyond the trade deadline, and perhaps back after All-Star break maybe, which is a little bit disappointing because obviously when he first got injured back on the 4th of January, they said, what did they say, 3 weeks initially? Well, it's already been 3 weeks, like 3 weeks today. So, like, I don't know, it sounds like it's going to be another 3 weeks at least. Then Eka says, last year we started playing well after the All-Star game. Yep, and it was too late. We went on a, what was it, 28-11 run, was it? 27-12 over the last 39 games. It still didn't make the playoffs. Could be a similar outcome this time around. FTW Clan says, if we get healthy and can lock in and win like 4 or 5 in a row, we could go up to like the 5-6 seed. Possibly. But can they sustain that? Are they good enough? Don't know. JRM Z7 says fire Kerr. Yeah, some more questionable rotation stuff today. Again, the GP2 thing, I'm always wanting GP2 to play less, but I think he should have played a lot more in this game. I know Gee only went 1 of 5 from the floor and 1 of 4 from 3, but felt like he should have played more than 19 minutes. The Trace stuff, should he have started the second half? I don't know. Knox says that's just not happening. They're not winning more than 2 games in a row. When was the last time we won 3 in a row? Literally. When was the last time we won 3 games in a row? I'm looking it up. Feels like forever. Let's have a look. They went a long time. It was nearly 2 months without winning 2 in a row. Last time they won 3 in a row was at Oklahoma City, home to Dallas and home to Memphis. And that last game was on November 15. So it's been nearly 2.5 months since the Warriors won 3 games in a row, which is quite extraordinary. Thendex says, we're not good enough to beat teams that are better than us. Kerr said that we can't make free throws, and he hasn't addressed it. These guys are being paid millions. They should be forced to work on their free throws. Yep. Like, I do, they're clearly working on their free throws. Let's not pretend like they're not, but clearly I think part of it is a mental thing. Like, some of these guys just get to the free throw line and freeze up. And you know what? I understand it, right? Like, I could go down, play Tuesday night social league basketball, and I could practice free throws before the game, and I could probably make 8 out of 10. And then I reckon in my social league basketball career, I'm under 50%. Like, I just can't make them in a game. Like, I'm not going to say I shit myself, but like, there is that added element to it that you just can't get if you're just practicing in the gym, with no one there, kind of thing. Damien says, start Post, bench Looney, and sit TJD until he can make a layup. Hard to disagree. Jay says, TJD's lack of touch around the rim is absolutely mind-blowing. Even Wiseman wasn't this much of a hazard for my laptop. Just poor old Jimmy Wise, just copying a stray there. Then X says they should change the tactics at his age. Steph shouldn't be running that much. Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed at kind of the lack of pick and pop opportunities they kind of ran with Steph and Steph and Post in this game. I think that's something they should probably, do they need to try and get away from the Steph off-ball stuff? It's really hard when they don't have another star. Like, it'd be nice to be able to put the ball in a guy's hands and, be able to have Steph sit in the corner and just say, all right, our second star is going to run this play. Steph's going to be there for a corner 3 if he needs it, but otherwise, like, he's taking this possession off. The Warriors just don't really have, like, I thought Schroeder was good in the first half. His first half stint was excellent. He had 10 points, a couple of assists, played really well, and then his second half was as equally as disastrous as Steph. Like, he did nothing. So the Schroeder stuff isn't really working. I think the bench role might suit him a little bit more, but he's a player that you got to look at before the deadline as a player that could be moved as well in the final 24 hours. Sneaker Dad says Steve Kerr is problem number 1. Young Wes says Schroeder played good in the first half and stunk in the second half. Yep. Thandek says even if we make the playoffs, we are likely to get swept. All I would say, I know it's sad to say, like, we'll make the playoffs and probably get kicked out in the first round anyway, but at least that would provide some excitement over the second half of the season if we're able to get on a run and make the playoffs. Damien says, we need a second consistent scorer for when Curry has a bad scoring game because he seems to be having a lot of those low scoring games this season. Yeah, I think I don't want to say, I don't want to go too early. I've always said this. I don't want to go too early on, Steph's losing it a little, but I have said it previously that this season seems to be the biggest disparity between his best and his worst games. Like, usually Steph has a bad game, he still gets to 18, 20 points. This season, it's like Steph has a bad game and he can go long stretches without scoring. He can have 10-point games, 13-point game today. Like, I feel like, and maybe that's more so the I suppose display of him losing it a little bit and not quite being at his prime anymore. It's not that he's still, it's not that he's not capable of those superstar prime performances where he can go for 30 plus. It's that his bad games are no longer at the same floor as they once were. They're quite a lot lower. All right. Drew says, all right, it's decided. XD not watching another game until Warriors win 3 in a row. It's not a bad plan. Could be waiting a while. Young West says, start Moody over Buddy. I think so. I think Steve just loves like having the thought of Buddy Yield as this elite 3-point shooter, and he's trying to get him back into some kind of rhythm, but it's just not happening. Jamu says Kerr really needs to go through. Kerr really needs to go though. 3-guard lineup seriously again, and a 37-year-old Steph running around like crazy. You wonder why the team is out of steam in the third, fourth quarters. Daniel says, why was Buddy in the game to close? He passed up a wide open 3 in the last 5 minutes to throw a grenade to Podz, then messed up a box out on the next possession. So annoying. Yeah, I know the play you're referring to where Wiggins drove, actually made a really nice kick out past the post. I thought Post was going to take the corner 3. He didn't. Passed up to Hield. It was a good pass. Hield was wide open. Thought, okay, he's going to take it. And then AD kind of closed out. Like there was still time for him to take the shot, and then swung it to Podz with a second on the shot clock, and it was a shot clock violation. Like that was just like either Post or Hield have to take those shots. And they just didn't. And, that's a story of the game from the Warriors. I do think like you're down 10 to 15 or whatever late in the game. I think Steve just thinks, all right, we need all the shooting on the floor that we can get. And that's why he had Steph and Hield out there. That's why he had Quentin Post out there, Wiggins, obviously. And then he had Podz because Podz was probably the best player in the game for the Warriors today. Jamu says GP2 Buddy Curry against mammoth-sized Lakers. Curry getting stuck on LeBron. Yeah, the size thing is a real issue for the Warriors, as it has been for years, it must be said. Andrew the GOAT says the Warriors cannot be losing games like this one tonight if they want to make a playoff run. Yeah, they're the kind of 50-50 games. You're going to need to win more of these than not, obviously, moving forward to try and make the playoffs. And that's 2 now in their home building against the Lakers where, like, I know Draymond and Kuminga are out, but, like, they could have won that game. I don't think the Lakers played lights out by any means. Like, they shot less than 35% from the floor. AD was huge, obviously, but like you look at the Lakers bench to me stinks. Like, it really stinks. And the Warriors just, it's twice now they've been beaten on their home floor by the Lakers in the space of a month. Knox says, if healthy, I think around starting lineup should be Steph, Wiggs, JK, Dre, and Post. Dre being there might help Post on the defensive side. Yep, I think that might be the best starting lineup too. I think the best starting lineup might be still trade for Vucevic and therefore have him instead of Post. Like, I don't know. It's hard to say right now that Quentin Post shouldn't be the starting center for the Warriors. I know we've only seen 3 games of it, and I don't think Steve's going to do it, but he's playing more than Looney. He's playing more than TJD. The Warriors just look better when he's out there as opposed to one of those 2 other guys. Like, he should probably be starting, but it's still like, do you really want this rookie center who's on a 2-way contract to be starting for you over the remainder of the season? I don't think so. And therefore, I think the Warriors still need to go out and get Vucevic and just have both Vucevic and Post on the roster together. And Post still gets some minutes, but it's not like this, right now, it almost looks like the Warriors, like Post almost has to play guaranteed 20, 25 minutes because the Warrior offense is just not good enough having multiple non-shooters out on the floor. Like TJD and Looney are such offensive non-factors. Like you have to play Post for 25 minutes, particularly when Draymond's also out. So you don't really have that small ball 5 option. Just quickly to note, Kyle Anderson was actually active in this game and didn't play. So he was a DNP. Like, what do the Warriors do with him before the trade deadline? I don't know. Jamu says, Buddy shouldn't be near the team for sanity's sake. I'm losing my mind. Yeah, well, I think I said after the game on Thursday that Anthony Slater of The Athletic said that Buddy Hield could be on the trade block along with Schroeder and the other expiring contracts of GP2 and Looney before the deadline here. Andrew, the GOAT, says the Warriors now under 500 after this loss tonight at home, so the Warriors are not good right now. I stated the obvious there. Daniel says, wish they rewarded Moody with a close. Him and Wiggs were making some tough lays. Yeah, Moody got to the rim a couple of times and made some tough shots. Wiggs 2 over Davis. Daniel says, so happy to see Podz and Post playing well, though. That is a bright spot, even in a frustrating loss. Yeah, the Warriors, again, as I said earlier, like the Warriors, young players played well. Podz, 17 points. 3 rebounds, 5 assists, hit 3 threes, and not only that, but like took 6 and looked like he wasn't hesitant whatsoever. Like just took them like when they were open. And I think that's been part of the frustration with Pods, even going back to his rookie year as well. It's like sometimes he's open and doesn't take them. Just looks really confident right now, which is good to see because he obviously had a rough start to the season. Then he's dealt with this abdominal injury, which is really his first major injury in the NBA, and he's come back and hasn't missed a beat. Like his first 2 games have been excellent. Best player on the floor for the Warriors tonight, I think. Andrew says it's not good that the Warriors have a bad record against the California teams, though. Jomish says someone needs to tell Kurt size does matter, especially for basketball. More Santos Post for sure. Yeah, again, I think I'm not saying that Post is a better defender than TJD or Looney necessarily, but there is some stuff where it's like, he puts his long reach up and it actually makes a little bit of a difference because like he's a legit 7-footer as opposed to having 6'9" guys out there. Does make a difference. Damien says, I don't think Buddy and Steph should be on the floor together in the fourth. Too many times they both play hero ball and shoot us out of the game. Andrew says, my question is, did you really think the Warriors would be under 500 right now? Like, to me, this is a problem. It depends at what time you ask me. If you asked me prior to the season, you said the Warriors are 22-23 after 45 games, I wouldn't have been surprised. Like, I would have been disappointed. I wouldn't have been surprised. I thought going into the season, the roster was pretty flawed. If you'd asked me after 12-3, after 15 games, that the Warriors would go, 10-20 in their following 30 games, then I'd be very, very disappointed from that position. So, right now, I think this is just the reality of the team. I think we're halfway through the season now. You get a pretty good feel of where the team's at, and this is just who they are, unfortunately. Bree says Warriors have lost 20 of our last 30 games. Young Wes says, do you think Jerry Stackhouse has a different coaching strategy in his head than Kerr? It's a pretty impossible question to answer. And again, like you don't really get I don't think too much of a feel externally of like how much, the assistant coaches are influencing the head coaching decisions, whether it be Stackhouse on the defensive end or Stotts on the offensive end. Andrew says it is becoming a problem for the Warriors every year being under 500. I mean, we've only had a couple of years of this. Let's not get too far away. I mean, 4 championships since 2015 is nothing to sneeze at, and clearly the best in the league. So I don't know. I always look at this, try and take a holistic approach in it, and say that we've had plenty of enjoyment. It's time for some rough stretches, rough periods. It's disappointing when you've still got Steph. I think a lot of us would probably be more understanding of having a rough period post Steph, but still having him in the lineup and playing well would suggest that it's pretty disappointing that they're under 500 again, I suppose. But you can't get too far away. Like, I think you've got to appreciate these down times, these difficult times, these frustrating times. I think that's certainly what makes the good times worth it. And, that's the case, I think, with the Warriors. It's the case with a lot of the teams that I support. If you look at, the other team that I support, the biggest, the Collingwood Football Club, we've won 2 premierships in my 28 years on this earth. So, it's one every 14 years. Cricket, we've got my team, the Hobart Hurricanes, for any cricket fans out there, playing in the Big Bash final tomorrow. This is the 15th season of the Big Bash, and this is we're going for our first title. We haven't won yet in 15 years. So it's pretty rare. And so to get 4 championships from the Warriors in the last decade or so, I think we shouldn't lose sight of that too much. Knox says everyone not named Steph, Wiggs, JK, and Dre should be on the trade block. Sneaker Dad says Slomo getting DNP while starting GP2 at power forward is absolutely insane. Andrew says, I'm sorry, but the Warriors might have to look into firing Steve Kerr in the offseason. Well, he's still got another year on his contract. He signed that 2-year, $34 million deal. So are they going to do that? I think it's just really difficult to see another coach coming in while Steph's still there. Like, I think Steph and Steve might depart at the same time, which would be pretty significant, but that wouldn't surprise me. Andrew also says, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be honest. Steve Kerr has not done a good job this year. The Warriors head coach should be in the hot seat if the Warriors don't make the playoffs. Daniel says, to me, it makes no sense that Schroeder's playing over slow-mo. Schroeder's role is supposed to be the ball handler, but it seemed like he did nothing impactful. I thought his stint in the first half was probably the best he's looked in a Warrior uniform. I thought he was really good. His second half was the complete opposite, a disaster. Then Nick says, we started the season, then we fell off. It doesn't even make sense. I think the first 15 games were a bit of a mirage. Like, Buddy Hield was just shooting the lights out. D'Anthony Melton was great. He gets injured. Hield goes back to being Hield. And, it is what it is, I suppose. Sneaker Dad says, Warriors need a rebuild like my beloved Hawthorn Hawks. Hawks fan. Jeez, that's not great. No, I don't mind. The Hawks were an exciting watch. They were an exciting watch this year. Last year, I should say. And they've had a big offseason getting Tom Barras in to solidify the defensive, the back line. So going to be interesting to see. My Magpies had a big offseason as well, getting Dan Houston and Harry Perriman. So both teams should be in the finals, and hopefully we see each other then. Doggy says, if you don't do a trade this year, it won't happen next year. Teams are tanking for this draft class. Sneaker Dad says, Hawks aren't scared to make the hard calls. Yeah, well, they got rid of Tommy Mitchell. Pies picked him up, and then he was probably second best on in the grand final last year, so we'll take that. Young West says, have you ever seen when Jerry Stackhouse clocked Jeff Hornacek in the face just as hard as Draymond did Jordan Poole? It's on YouTube. Sorry for changing the subject, but I hate the Warriors losing. Is that in so what's that in reference to in terms of this current setup of the Warriors? Do you think they need to be more hard-nosed potentially and more, I suppose, influence from Jerry Stackhouse in that perspective? I don't know. I'm going to finish it up here shortly. We've been going for nearly 37 minutes. Thank you to everyone that has commented so far. If you've got any other comments, please let me know. The Warriors have what should be an easier game against the Utah Jazz at Chase Center on Tuesday. So looking forward to that one. Of course, we are now, 11 days, 12 days from the trade deadline. So I don't think anything will happen here in the next week still, but you never know. The Vucevic stuff continues to hang around. He's clearly the one the Warriors have been most linked to and continue to be over the last few days. And I still think that's a move the Warriors should make. Whether the Quentin Post stuff emphasizes that they need to make that trade, or maybe suggests that they don't need to because they've actually got this stretch 5 option in Quentin Post who can play 20, 25 minutes. I don't know. Damien says Warriors are the only team that have rookies that are better than the vets most nights. Daniel says, it's bad when Steph is actively trying to get in the paint but just can't finish or hit his step backs. His body language also looked a bit reserved even when we were hitting some shots. Yeah, the finishing around the paint from Steph sometimes hasn't been great. Jay says drug test Kerr. I don't know. I thought some of the rotation stuff. I mean, the Buddy Hield minutes are a disaster. GP2 should have played more. I mean, I don't want to turn into a Steve Kerr apologist and a defender, but I do think this roster is just not great, and therefore it's pretty hard to turn this kind of roster into a deep playoff team. I don't know how much another coach would be able to fix things. I think the Warriors, you look around the league now, teams just have multiple guys who can average 20 plus points, and the Warriors have one. And even Steph's down to 21, 22 points a game this season. I'm sorry, I'm just going to put it out there. We haven't really spoken about it. Steph should not be an all-star starter. I know why he is, because they clearly wanted him to be an all-star starter at Chase Center in 2025 All-Star game, but he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be. So I'm glad he is. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad he is. And of course, he deserves it across the course of his career. But for this season alone, if you're just picking it from recent form, Steph Curry should not be an all-star starter in the Western Conference. So it is what it is, and I'm looking forward to it regardless. And I'm glad that Steph is, but it doesn't change the fact that he shouldn't be. We'll finish it up there. Thank you very much to all of you that came in. Another disappointing Warrior performance. Some positives again to take out of it with the likes of Post, Pajemski, Moody, the young guys. Hopefully we get Draymond and Kuminga back at some point here, and that adds something to the Warriors, but of course they weren't particularly good when Kuminga and Green were in the lineup anyway. So I don't know how much we can take from that moving forward. Again, Jazz game on Tuesday should be a win, so the Warriors should get back to 500. And it seems like we're just alternating wins and losses at the moment and going from one game below 500 to back to 500 and just continuing that, which is really just what this team is at this point of the season with their roster at present. So thank you very much again to you guys that have commented. Thank you to those of you that are watching on the replay or listening via your podcast feed. We've got a couple of days break here until the game against the Jazz. So I probably will do another podcast episode in the meantime, particularly if there's any trade stuff floating about in the next 24, 48 hours. Thank you once again, guys, and I hope you have a great weekend.